I was considered a prophet at my church because I could get on stage and call people out and read their mail, which was very applauded.
So you'd read their mail?
I could tell them things that were going on in their life, and I could speak into it.
Brittany, she's one of the yoga teachers at Lila Yoga, and we went on a nice little beach trip where we all hung out, and we ended up doing some beautiful beach shots on the beach, yoga photos on the beach, like some slow motion yoga photos. It was just interesting that you were good in front of the camera, whereas some people, it seems, I think they try too much or try to change things. I don't know, or they have so much they're trying to put into it, and me as a photographer kind of knows what already looks good, or I have my own kind of way. And
so that I trust you, that's what it is.
Okay, cool.
I know you know what you're doing, so I'm like, just tell me.
So you had already seen some of my work before or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew it was good.
All right, that's cool. That's good. Yeah, maybe some people I've shot with in the past were trying to put too much into it. But at the same time, maybe they didn't know where I was coming from, I guess you could say. So you're a psychology major, is that what it was?
I am, yes, I'm a psychology major. I'm not super far into it yet. I've only taken 3 psychology courses, so take me with a grain of salt. But I have worked with psychology-related fields for quite a while. Actually, inside of the church, I ran what was called a Sozo ministry, which is where we helped people get into a meditative state.
Ooh.
And then we would help them work through their traumas. It was really powerful and really cool. I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
How did you get these people into a meditative state?
So actually what we would do is first we'd have them lie down and take some deep breaths. And then we would open up their hearts by having them imagine God, actually, in any shape or form. Some people would see light. Some people would see an old man, whatever they see as God. Yeah, and that would be comforting, and they would kind of just start to relax, and we'd have them go places in their imagination with God and do these different things. I mean, it would sound like the people were on mushroom trips. It was so crazy, the different things they would see and do, and they started incorporating their imagination from a state of relaxation.
Mm-hmm. What made you interested in psychology, you think?
I would say a traumatic childhood and spending my adult life trying to figure out how to process through those things and heal has drawn me to the scientific side of it.
What can you tell me about, or what would you like to share as far as your traumatic childhood goes?
Oh yeah, it's kind of all on the table.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so my real father, he had multiple children that he abandoned. Him and my mom got married and he left immediately after, so I never met him. And then my mom remarried a man who was very mean to me and just kind of had a distaste for me, and so he would be verbally and physically abusive. Then I was raped by a half-brother around 15, 16, which sent me on kind of a dark path. I got into just a lot of things, seeking to fill that void of no man has loved me, they've only abused me, and I sought to fill it in all these different ways. Even to the point of trying to commit suicide at the age of 16.
Wow.
So luckily that was failed.
Yeah.
I had just all these different traumas that I didn't really know what to do with them or how to work through them, which really drew me to spirituality and then also psychology kind of mixed together.
Wow. I mean, that just really shows you, because you seem like a very awake person, for whatever that means, but it just shows you it's like that's how a lot of people the nicest and coolest people have been through the most stuff, like the hardest times.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds kind of crass, but those hard things shape you. They make you who you are. It's not just a saying, you know, like it really does shape you and kind of guide you. I'm grateful for all of it because it has pushed me into this field, which I love. I don't know if I would love this as much if it weren't for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some goodness to it all.
That's fascinating. What brought you to yoga? Eventually, you were always interested in spirituality.
So I was very interested in spirituality. I was what you would call charismatic. Charismatic is just it's a Christian word for like filled with the Holy Spirit.
Oh, okay.
So doing all of the things like speaking in tongues and prophesying and all of these very charismatic spiritual things. I was considered a prophet at my church because I could get on stage and call people out and read their mail, which was very applauded in the Christian world.
Wow.
So
you'd read their mail?
I could tell them things that were going on in their life and I could speak into it. Yeah.
And you really could?
Yeah.
Intuitively,
I don't know how to explain that. I think it was intuition. It was like a school of ministry where they kind of taught us and we had to practice. And I think you do. You can like lock souls with someone and start to feel what's going on. I would get these pictures and begin to understand things. And to be honest, I've not practiced that ability in so long because I've not been inside that world. But it is one of those things that I look back on and I was like, that was cool. I enjoyed that. So yeah, I was very charismatic, but also very inside of a bubble. I kind of fed myself someone else's sermons all the time, was really getting all my information from the outside, and none of it was really coming from the inside. For physical reasons, I turned to yoga. I taught a lot of exercise classes, and yoga was the next thing I wanted to conquer. But when I started to do it, I noticed that my visions got really clear. So I would do yoga in the morning and then I would sit and be still and just my mind was so clear. I saw things really clear. I worked through problems very quickly and I saw how helpful of a tool it was to get me into that place of hearing, thinking, processing. And so it became my favorite tool as far as connection to the spiritual world went, but then also my connection to myself, which was not something I was used to. With all the trauma, I was trying to engage outside of my body. And so this took me inside my body, which was a whole new world to open up and work through. And it was challenging, but it was so good. I am so connected to my body, which I wasn't before. And that changed everything. It changed the way I enjoy food. It changed the way I take steps when I'm walking, just feeling the different muscles being in my body. I took it off the mat in so many ways. So it kind of became my teacher.
It is. It's definitely a teacher. I love the saying, like martial arts, you're fighting someone else, and in yoga, your opponent is yourself.
Yeah.
But that's kind of why I got into yoga and stuff and whatnot as well. But what do you think you've learned, or what do you think that most people these days need to learn? Like, from what can people or in the world today learn from yoga?
I think in the world today, where we are so stimulated, so bombarded by messaging, right? Just so in it. You know, they say a fish doesn't know it's wet because it's lived its whole life in water. That's us. We live our whole life in this bombardment of stimulation. And for me, yoga is silencing all of that and getting quiet and still, which I think is the antidote for so many different things. Actually, there was a study done that showed different parts of the brains being activated from meditation. And people that meditate have a really high activation of the left side of the brain, which makes you happy and at peace. Whereas people that haven't meditated, or just an average person, doesn't have that same activation. They studied the Dalai Lama, and his brain was extremely left-sided, extremely vibrant in that area. And so they started studying what he was doing, and it was the meditation. So they would take people and measure their brains, and then measure it after they meditated for 6 months. And there was this huge growth, and they reported feeling happier, more at peace, but they could literally see it. It changed the brain. And yoga is a big part of that for me. Yoga is what prepares me to meditate. It's its own meditation in a way, as I connect to my body, but then I'm finally exhausted enough to be still and to meditate and to let my mind go to that state.
Is there any particular meditation or type of meditation that they taught for this?
You know, I'm not sure what specific meditation it was. For me, I personally like to just be quiet and breathe for myself, but I absolutely love when someone leads me through a meditation as well. We'd have to research what kind of meditation the Dalai Lama does, I guess.
Yeah. I was wondering, because it could be, there's so many, different ways. That's why I like to.
I like to imagine him like needing absolutely nothing. He's just sitting on like a bare floor, just
but to me, there's so
basic.
much more going on. Like, it's like your attention has to be somewhere, is the way I see it. So I'm usually just trying to charge my body, so I'm, just focusing energy to my belly. But for the most part, I don't know. I'm exploring. I'm still learning as well. Trying new stuff all the time. Where did you first learn yoga?
I learned yoga through a company called Holy Yoga. It's a Christian yoga company. Fun fact: I was actually scared of yoga. The religion that I was in basically felt like it was demonic, and said that doing different yoga poses was inviting different demons into your body, and that I needed to stay away from it. So I got my yoga certification and started teaching in the church, and then eventually opened a studio inside of the church. So I took what they said and said, no, we're going to do this.
Cool. I mean, I think I have somewhat of an idea, but maybe you know more than me. Why do a lot of Christians hate, or why are they against yoga?
I mean, it's why is anyone against anything? It's usually fear, right? Something you don't understand, you're afraid of. And that's a big thing in spirituality or religion. Really, you explain things you don't understand. And they don't understand yoga, so they explain it in the only way they know how, which is demons, and so it's misguided, but it's there.
Because I know that's exactly what I was told by someone. They're like, they're all demons.
Funny too, because I was so afraid, but as I would do the poses, I was like, I feel God, I feel the energy, I feel it. Like, there's no difference between the two. What you call energy and what we call God, this is the same thing. And we've got to come to some common ground to recognize we're talking about the same thing here. And I feel it doing yoga, and you feel it singing and raising your hands in worship, and we've got to get on the same page.
I do love, the idea of like God is the goodness of the world. So, or it's everything working together. It's so funny to try and it's hard to explain that. But also when a Christian's reading certain, I would guess, I'm trying to think of something in particular, but when they are reading and someone's referring to God, or the Tao does not even translate to God, especially it translates to the way of things, or your way, or a way. And so they immediately think you mean God the way they mean God. And my biggest criticism is like, God's beyond our human flaws, and they give God all these human flaws. Like, gets angry, gets jealous, sends you to hell, and he takes things personally. Right? So I just think that's a pretty funny point. But don't get me wrong. Actually, as I've gone throughout my life, I grew up Christian, and then I kind of went away, and I've studied. I study all different religions. I listen to a lot of different people, so it's kind of started bringing me back to understanding why Christianity is actually good in some ways, in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's. I'm open. I like it all. You know, like I listen to everything.
Yeah, I think they've all
like
the religions have their goodness in them. It's when you get to that fundamental way of viewing things, where you like, this is the only way. This is the literal way, and everyone else is wrong. I think that's when you start to get into danger.
Yeah.
Because Christianity has so much good to offer, right? It taught me forgiveness. It taught me love. It taught me kindness and compassion. And it also taught me, to be an asshole and think I was better than everyone else. So it's just, you've got to find that balance.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty funny. Do you have a routine, a morning routine or something or meditation?
Yes. My morning routine is typically to do a pour over coffee. And while that sits, I do a little bit of yoga. And I'll go outside with my coffee, and I'll just kind of sit, and I'll be quiet, and I'll sip the coffee. I don't know if you quite call this meditation, but I just sit in silence and just let the day begin, let the sun rise, and enjoy my few minutes of silence before my children wake up.
Yeah, just be. Huh?
It's great. I love that moment. It's like my favorite part of the day, and I'm 100% a morning person.
Oh, good.
Yes.
What did you think about before you had kids and after? Or?
Oh my gosh. I mean, just everything changes.
Yeah.
My whole identity kind of changed in a good way too. I became way less selfish. It kind of forces you to. But also, it's taught me love, and it's given me love in this way that I didn't know I was capable of. It's really healed a lot of my childhood wounds as well, to be able to love these small children in the way that I always wanted to be loved. And so honestly, even though they're breaking the silence as they come in, I'm always so happy to see them, and the first thing I do is like, give me a hug. Because that's like a meditation in itself, to just feel the love that you feel for someone and hold them for a moment, and they're like, ow, you're hurting me, and I'm just like, I just love you so much.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, no, children, just feeling the love for them, feeling the love for anyone is a beautiful radiation to just kind of sit in,
Yeah. So being that you're so into psychology, have you researched the best ways to bring up a kid?
Oh my gosh.
Too much?
I am always researching that and looking into it and seeing how to talk to them and how to help them and when not to help them and all of it. I mean, I know that the first 7 years of a child's life are fundamental. I mean, it's giving them their identity, their brains are forming and solidifying in a lot of ways. Not that they can't change, but it's so important, and it feels like such a huge task, right? Especially I'm still raising me, and now I'm also raising two human beings, which gives me so much compassion for my parents. I'm like, obviously you messed up, like we all are. But yeah, I love figuring out how to do it the right way. I'm probably a little too perfectionist on it.
That kind of reminds me of like some of the things that I feel. Not that I want to get deep into the way the world's going right now, or the way the United States is going, but in some ways they call it the big heart, little brain syndrome, where it's like, well, I talk about this because I've experienced this with my life in some ways, where so much you think like if I just give that it's not going to be it's the right thing to do, but sometimes you can give too much, or sometimes you can be too accepting, to where it's detrimental to some people. And when it comes to the argument for like welfare and things like that, so but just a good example would be the acceptance of like transgender athletes into either side, right? So why would somebody that was originally a male transition to a female be able to compete against females? And there's multiple of these happening in track. in wrestling, in weightlifting. They're like breaking world records and shit. You know, like you're not breaking a world record if you're born a man, but what's that doing to all the other women? In fact, one of the leading weightlifters for the Olympics, who had been winning for a long time, and I think she even broke some records. Then this guy who was for almost 30-something years of his life was a man, transitions to a female, competes in weightlifting and breaks the record.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it's time for a new category.
The point of bringing that up is the idea that it can, just like we know that kids, you can give them too much to where they're so spoiled and they
Right,
don't know
you have to have boundaries with kids. And honestly, they crave that. They don't feel loved when you don't set boundaries for them, and they're screaming out, crying, please set boundaries for me. And we need that too. You know, we need that in our lives. The world needs that. We need boundaries of what is and isn't acceptable, and how we're expected to behave, you know? For example, if my child jumps on the couch and he knows that he's not supposed to, if I ignore that, he's going to continue doing it. But if I acknowledge it and say, hey, we don't jump on the couch, there's going to be a consequence, then that helps him to make a good decision.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's really hard to set boundaries because it's easier to ignore it. You don't want to handle it. Or maybe you're just really busy and you're like, you know what, I don't want to deal with it. So setting boundaries is really, really important for kids. And obviously, like today, we need to redefine boundaries in our world. As it's changing and growing, we have to change and redefine our boundaries. Obviously, having a male that transitions to a woman is not going to be fair in the female category, and that person needs their own category.
What bothers me is when people, for instance, you're saying jump on the couches, there's going to be consequences if you're explaining why we don't jump on the couch, things like that. What do you think about parents that just say, because I told you so?
I think that's a cop-out. And
Yeah,
it's
right?
really easy. My parents said that all the time, but what you're teaching the child there is listen to authority, because authority is always right.
Yeah.
And you don't want to teach them that. You want to teach them to think for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, you explain to them why they don't do it. There's a consequence. Our couch will not be as comfortable if you keep jumping on the couch. You're going to have to clean all those pillows up if you jump on the couch. Like, just explaining cause and relation of what they're doing, I think helps them enough. And they're young, so you have to remind them sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, saying because I said so, I'm not looking for mindless obedience. I'm looking for loving
Good point.
obedience
There's
with
a lot.
understanding.
And that's, there's a lot of mindless obedience. Which brings me to the point, what do you think of, or how can you tell if somebody's awake or not?
That's a great question. I don't even know how to tell if I'm awake.
Right? That's how I feel, exactly.
It seems like such a personal thing, but I would say drastic change is how you know if someone is awake or if you're awake, where something just clicks in your head and you make some drastic change. You are fully awake to something, there's going to be a change.
Yeah.
You know, in
Yes.
action or thought or.
Yeah, because I've had people say, I've had my awakening, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've had awakenings too, but it's not just one. You know, like,
Yeah.
I think that can be a trap. Like, some people
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm there. You're like, well, you have a perspective, like your perspective changed, and that maybe helped change things, but there's probably gonna be more coming.
Oh, I agree. I've had a few awakenings, and I think that it's kind of a process of like awakening and falling and awakening.
Yeah.
Like it's not all linear, and it's not one time. It's a process. Like, if I stop waking up to things, that would be a really sad life. I'm 29. I hope I wake up to things as I go all the time, you know?
Yeah. Which I didn't finish explaining this earlier, so I listened to Eckhart Tolle and then a little bit of a number of guys. But he was explaining, and in so many words, he was saying that an awake person is someone who will take an idea or take some information, toss it around, and then come up with their own conclusion. Whereas like a zombie or, you know, or someone who just trusts authority is then take the information as the conclusion. You know?
So it seems like awakening is kind of compatible with like critical thinking. You think for yourself rather than just accepting what you're told.
Yeah. But it was good to hear like a spiritual teacher like Eckhart Tolle kind of get into that, you know, in a good way. So.
You know, I was told once that our school systems, like even our school systems, were designed for obedience, to create obedient workers, you know? And just the systems that we have in place are to create obedience. And, you know, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. One weird one that I'll say is I did this super nerdy thing whenever I was single, and I did what you call in the Christian world writing letters to your future husband. And I wrote 3 of them, okay? And I didn't know who I was going to marry, obviously. I'd never met him at the time. Well, come to find out, the day that I started writing these letters was his birthday, and I dated them all. So it was just like this crazy synchronicity that it kind of feels like life is just kind of like, hey, you're on point. My second son was born on 7/7/17 at 7:17. The nurses were like freaking out. They're like, this is the craziest thing. You got like guardian angels or something. I also had like a 5-minute labor, which is unheard of, and nobody thought I was in labor because I was so peaceful and calm. They're like, you're not in labor, we don't believe you. And I was like, I'm a second-time mom. I know that I'm having a child right now. And surely I did.
Wow, that's amazing. Damn, you're put yourself through shit, people.
Hey, it's the fastest way to make a diamond, put it under pressure, right?
Yeah, that's I mean, that's one of the things. That's why we do yoga, right? You put yourself in uncomfortable positions, and just like working out, you tear down the muscles so it grows back stronger.
Yeah.
And that's why I do ice baths too. The ice bath, man, it's like the ultimate test of just letting go. So like, whatever that muscle is, or relaxation muscle, like learning to just like let it go, let it go, let it go. You know?
I joke that I'm a little masochistic because I'm sitting in these poses saying, okay, just be in the pain.
Yeah.
Learn to love the pain.
Yeah.
Relax into it. Stop resisting it. And that it's such a good lesson to bring out into the world because we're constantly hit with things that hurt, right? And when you're resisting it, you're not enjoying life. But when you kind of lean into it and go into it and accept it, life is so much more enjoyable and it flows so freely.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah. So good. Cool. Thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure sharing. I love your work, so I'm excited to see what you do.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. We'll do some breathing soon.
Yes.
All right.
Like now. No.
Actually, what time is it? Oh, yeah, 4:44.
Woo! See, I don't know how you do that sitting on a block. My butt hurts.
Yeah, it takes time to get used to it.
I tell people I didn't have a real yoga education because I went through the Christian company. So like when it comes to sitting on blocks, I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that.
Thanks for watching. For more content based on finding balance in life, make sure you subscribe, like, hit the bell, share it on all your social medias. And if you want to check out another great interview, check this interview by Dan Burley. And then I got a little bit of travel content here. And stay tuned for more videos involved finding balance in life through creativity and physical practices.